Okay, hello and good morning everyone. Welcome to JFD Traders Espresso with me, Darius on Anucauskas. Today is the 10th of February 2020, so yep, welcome everyone. Welcome to this Monday's morning session where we're going to have a quick look at the markets, a few of the charts, the usual stuff. But before we do that, as always, let's quickly have a read through our risk disclaimer. So, the content we produce does not constitute investment advice or investment recommendation, should not be considered as such, and does not in any way constitute an invitation to acquire any financial instrument or product. As always, I'll give you a few seconds to read the rest and we can continue. Okay, also just before we jump in, quick mentioning of our JFD YouTube channel, to which you can always subscribe to in order not to miss any of our upcoming videos, and of course our JFD Bank website and specifically our JFD research page, which we update on a daily basis. So yep guys, I believe you can find a lot of useful information here. But right now, let's jump into the charts. Now, the first one I want to touch on here is the German DAX. Now, I've looked at this one last week, and basically what I was telling you to keep an eye on this barrier, this key area of resistance near around between the 13,600 and the 13,640 zone. We did give it a test of the 13,600, but we didn't really quite go even further. So for now, of course, the same idea remains. As you can see, although we did have a bit of a decline on Friday, but nevertheless it kind of remained still remained above, let's say, all of its EMAs here on the 4-hour chart. But to get a little bit more excited with the upside, ideally we would like to see a push above the 13,600 level, and then of course maybe just for that extra confirmation, a push above the 13,640 could do the trick for more buyers, because this way the index would confirm a forthcoming higher high and also would confirm an all-time high. And let me just quickly show you what I'm talking about. So this is where we are right now. Last time it was at the highs here was around the in January 2018, so this is when it reached that 13,600 level. So that's why, guys, ideally we would like to see a push above this barrier before we could consider any further moves higher. Now in terms of the downside, now this is where the tricky bit is. Of course, don't get me wrong, everything's it is quite overstretched to the upside, but to be honest, I mean, if we start drawing some upside lines here, now this is where it could end up being. So you can see that the price is still kind of above this upside line, although we did get a break here in the end of January. In the beginning of February was trading below this upside line, but it kind of quickly got back above this upside line. So for now, of course, what you could do is yes, keep your eyes on that one. And this is where what I've mentioned last week, when I was saying that we will keep an eye on the 13,400 level in order to consider the downside, after which after a break of which we would consider the downside. So, and this kind of comes in line with this upside support line, and this upside support line is running from the low of the 15th of August. So something, guys, to keep an eye on. Don't get me wrong, of course, if you want to consider the downside in the more of a medium term, then well, you would need to see it drop below this of course the psychological 13,000 level, and then a drop below the 12,886-87 territory here, and only then we could aim for further declines. For now, if we do get a drop below the 13,400, then well, we will only consider the downside in the short run, and then we'll take it from there, guys. For now, it's still balancing above this upside line. The cash index, and looking at the cash index right now, is currently around the 13,495 level, so basically not far from this area, but still it's basically around here. around the still above the above the low of Friday. So again, everything's kind of still a little bit on the shaky side, but if it travels above this barrier here, the one that I've mentioned earlier, then yes, we will aim for the upside. Gold, very quickly on this. Now again, we're not really doing anything with gold here right now, because in a way, looking at this picture, it's not really something ideal. I mean, on one hand, it's still trading above some of its upside support lines here, a short-term tentative upside support line taken from the low of the 12th of December. Then there's another one taken from the low of the 26th of November. Now again, as you can see by the arrow drawn here, we would probably wait for a drop below the 1547 territory. That's the low of last week. And just let me do, yeah, that's the low of last week. So if we do get a drop below this would also place the price below its 200 EMA on the 4-hour chart, and then yes, we could start aiming to the downside. Now as you can see, the pair is trying to still to climb higher, but the price still remains below this downside resistance line, this short-term tentative downside resistance line taken from the high of the 7th of January. So that's why ideally we would like to see a push above the 1594 zone, something like that, and that's the high of last week. If we do get a push above this, then yes, we will aim for the upside. Until then, we're not really doing anything here, just continue observing it, and yep. It will really depend on the equity markets and how they perform. So if the equities start sliding, then well, we may see a bit more excitement here in the eyes of the bulls on gold. So keep your eyes on that one. Bitcoin. Now, haven't looked at this one for quite a while, and this one I'm looking at here. The charting is from Coinbase, but basically. For now, given the fact that yes, the crypto managed to reach its psychological 10,000 level, and it did overshoot it slightly by about 200 points, $200, and it reached the area near the 10,200 zone. So, excuse me, guys. I do apologize, guys. My voice is going down a little bit, but nevertheless, basically, what we can see here, of course, the fact that the crypto continues to travel nicely above some of its tentative upside lines here. So one of which is, of course, this one taken from the low of the 2nd of January. Of course, we can start drawing something here as well, taken from the low of the 26th of January, and in a way, for now, I mean, yes, everything's kind of leaning more towards the upside. We will continue aiming for the upside as long as it continues to trade above these lines here. Now we are seeing a bit of correction here this morning, so that's, let's say, healthy, and we'll keep an eye on this short-term upside support line taken from the low of the 25th of January. If it holds, we could see another round of buying, and yep, probably another higher high here. The only thing is, for those who are more on the cautious side, what you could do is just wait for a push above the 10,200 territory and then aim for further upside. And let me just jump into a daily chart very quickly on this one. So that's the situation here. Basically, if it continues to climb higher here, yes, keep your eyes on these upside lines. If one of them holds, then yep, the bulls could still be active and could still continue pushing this one higher. Now, the reason, of course, one of the reasons why it's becoming attractive here as well, the whole crypto world, is, of course, people are starting to shift towards something which was slightly forgotten, let's put it that way. And yep, cryptos are one of those. So for now, we are seeing a bit of a nice increase in demand for cryptos, and that's what's driving the price higher. But from the technical picture, basically, keep your eyes eyes on the 10,200 zone. A nice good pop above this could lead towards the high of the of October. I do apologize. So the highest point of October near the 10,540, and then we'll take it from there. In terms of the downside, we'll take a very conservative approach and wait for a drop below this level right here. That's the low of the 4th of February, or in other words, the lowest point of February. So if we do get a drop below this 9,078 territory, then yes, we will start considering lower areas, one of which could be the 8,216, and then below that, yep, there are some good levels as well. But for now, guys, everything's kind of leaning more towards the upside. So yep, keep your eyes on some of these potential breakout areas. Now then, US dollar against the Singapore dollar. Now this is, I've talked about a lot about this one last week. Basically, for obvious reasons, we're having a very nice, interesting technical picture here with a straight shoot here to the upside. Now, what we figured out is, of course, this is a very nice gauge of the whole coronavirus. And how everything, or should I say, developments around the coronavirus, because the Singapore economy really depends heavily on China and its trade, and of course it depends on it does have a huge influx of Chinese tourists. So basically, with the coronavirus, that all kind of took a bit of a slowdown, and now, I mean, you can see that this is the reaction that we had here on these on the US dollar against the Singapore dollar, and basically after kind of almost reaching this highest point of September that I've talked about last week, the pair is starting to show maybe some signs of a bit of possible correction. Now the only thing is, what you need to keep an eye on here is, of course, this area of support here, which previously acted as good resistance, this area near the 1.3880 territory, and that's near the high of the near the highest point of October. So in a way, if we see a drop below that area, then yep, we may consider further declines here. Now, this is why I have the Fibonacci retracement here. So in a way, let's say if this is the high was already the high, then we may take it and draw it from here, and basically we could start aiming for the 1.3812 territory, somewhere around here. That's the 23.6% retracement on the Fibonacci extension. Sorry, on the Fibonacci levels, and then and if, of course, that fails, then yep, further declines could be possible. But again, for now, guys, all eyes are on this little area here near the 1.3880. If it gets a nice good drop, and if we see at least a 4-hour candle close below this, then yep, we will consider a deeper correction to the downside, where initially we will target the 1.3812, and then from there we'll take it from there, and then we'll see what it wants to do after. Don't get me wrong, we still have a nice attractive area here, the highest point of September, near the 1.3942 territory. But again, as you can see right now, the pair is showing some excuse me, there's some signs of willingness to correct to the downside a little bit. But again, we need that drop below the 1.3880 first. Jumping into a few pairs now very quickly. USDJPY. So this one, and let me just jump into the 4-hour chart. So basically, this one had a nice rally last week. It drifted on Friday, then it drifted lower. This is what I talked about last week about this pair. Basically, if this declines but fails to drop below the 109.65 level, it did drop, but it never even closed a 4-hour candle below this. And basically now we're seeing this a bit of a correction here to the upside. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still a tricky one, but let's not forget that the for now the overall kind of trend is still to the upside. So in a way, you could draw it from here, or both of these lines are actually going to be a bit tentative ones, but probably let's stick to this one, the lowest point of August, and we're going to keep an eye on this line. And yep, for now, guys, the way we could play this one out from the short-term perspective is that if the 109.65 territory continues to hold, then there is a possibility for this one to push higher. And yes, if it if it holds, then we could see a nice push higher. But for those who are more a little bit on the cautious side, wait for a push above the 110.03 territories, basically the high of last week, and this way a nice good pop here could open the path towards the highest point of January near the 110.29. But if that is just seen as a temporary obstacle for this pair, then further acceleration to the upside could be possible. So one of the levels to consider after that could be, and let me just quickly put this one on the chart, and not this one, but there we go, there we go. Let me just somewhere around here, basically near the high of the and can I capture it? There we go. Near the high of May here, near the high of the 21st of May, near the 110.67 zone. So some good areas to watch, guys. In terms of the downside, if it suddenly drops below the 109.27 zone, then in a way there is a possibility to see further decline. The only problem, of course, is this upside support line that I've mentioned. So in a way, if we do get a drop towards that, if we do get a drop below the 109.26, then we will aim for this upside support line from the short-term perspective. Because for us to get excited about the downside in the medium term, ideally we would like to see a drop below the 108.26 zone. But again, that's still a bit far away. For now, we're examining this potential idea where we could see a bit of a curve here and a pushback to the upside. AUDUSD, very quickly on this. By the way, good morning to everybody in the chat room. So, good morning. Basically, looking at this picture here, AUDUSD so continues to drift lower, trading below this downside resistance line taken from the high of the 1st of January. But let me just actually clear out the chart a little bit, because let me start from the beginning, and probably for this one, ideally I would prefer to jump into a daily chart. So this is the picture. Of course, overall the trend is still to the downside. Initially, after we had a nice pop above this 200 EMA here, 200-day EMA on the 24th of December, we had this pop, and it looked like the pair was willing to travel higher to change the course of its trend, but it quickly kind of in the beginning of January started drifting lower, started declining, and the pair found support not far from this little territory here, near the 0.6677 zone. So for now, guys, what we're going to do here is we're going to keep an eye on this area. You can see that we did get a drop initially below this, but the pair quickly reversed back to the upside, and today, this morning, we are seeing the pair trying to push back above it. And it's for now it's succeeding. Continue observing this territory, guys. Continue observing this area, the 0.6677 zone, or you could keep an eye on this little low here of the lowest point of October near the 0.667071 area. So for now, guys, be very careful with this. Like I said, if this area gets broken, then well, this would confirm a forthcoming lower low, and we could start aiming for even lower areas. For now, in terms of the upside, well, we would ideally prefer to see a push above this little, let me just put this one on the chart, this little short-term tentative downside resistance line taken from the highest point of December, and basically in addition to that, in order to aim for higher levels, a push above this high here, the high of last week near the 0.6774 area could do the trick for more buyers, and we could see a push further north. For now, we're leaning we're cautiously bearish, and in order to aim for lower levels, ideally we need to see another drop here below the 0.6671 zone. So keep your eyes on that one. GBPNZD, now very quickly on this one, the pair is still somewhat on an uptrend, but it's still a very tentative uptrend here. If we draw this upside line taken from the low of the 30th of July, you can see that the pair is stuck here, and it did try to make its way higher last week, but it quickly sold off, and drifted lower, but still remains above this upside line. So what you could do here is, guys, just to be on the safe side for the upside, wait for a push above this barrier here, the 2.0432 zone. I do understand we're missing out on a bit of an area here. For those who are more probably on the riskier side, you could just keep your eyes on the last week's high near the sorry, not last week's high, but let's say Friday's high. Is this? Yeah, there we go. So Friday's high, and if we get a nice push above the 2.0195 territory, then yes, we could aim for the this high that we saw here back on the 30th. On the 31st of January, and then like I said, we would take it from there. Until then, it's a very tricky one. Even with the downside, it's also a bit difficult because we need to see a break of this upside line first before we could consider the downside, and of course ideally a drop below this little area here near the 1.9878 zone. So until then, we're not going to do anything, and yep, just going to continue observing it. But if we get a push above the 2.0195, then we will consider a bit of upside here, but we'll be very careful and cautious. We'll take it with a pinch of salt because there are a bunch of good obstacles here to for the pair to overcome. If we do get a push above the 2.0195, then yes, we will aim for this 2.0432 area. So keep your eyes on that one. And the last pair for this session is going to be the euro dollar. So looking at this daily chart, we had a perfect test of this 1.0939 level that I talked about last week, and let me just jump into a 4-hour chart. There we go. So we had a nice test of this area, the 1.0939, so it worked out perfectly. I talked about this one last week. As I said, this was the low of the 8th of October. This is where the rate kind of got a nice hold up, and we're seeing now a bit of correction to the upside. Now, that said, you can see that the pair is struggling to push above its today's pivot, which is roughly around the 1.0957 zone. So, of course, don't get me wrong, we are a bit overstretched here to the downside. So maybe a bit of correction, more correction to the upside could be possible. Overall, we're still trading below this downside line taken from the high of the 31st of December. And we'll keep an eye on this one, because if the rate starts getting back above the 1.0990 territory, then, well, I mean, we will consider a potential move towards this downside line. If it doesn't go above this barrier, then we may see something like this happening, guys, where we could see another drift lower. And for those who are more on the cautious side, you could just stick to this 1.0939 level, because if it gets a nice good break, this would confirm a forthcoming lower low, and we could start aiming for these little lows here near the low of the 2nd of October. And let me just put this one on the chart very quickly, and that's roughly around the 1.0903 zone. Don't get me wrong, we still have the lowest point of October here near the couldn't catch this one. So the lowest point of October around the 1.0878 zone. But again, like I said, guys, for now, given that we already had a steep decline here, there might be a chance for maybe a larger correction to the upside. Maybe it could push back above this pivot, but if it struggles to get back above the 1.0990 zone, then, well, I mean, this is where it could become interesting for the sellers again, and we could see another dive lower. For those who are more on the cautious side, you could just wait for a drop below the 1.0939. So, okay, guys, I really hope you found it useful. Thank you very much for sticking around and watching it till the end. If you want to join me later on at my Traders Tea Time, as always, this 14:15 GMT. For now, I hope you have a beautiful trading day, guys, and I'll see you later. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.